Hello, Donna Kato here. Welcome to my studio and welcome to my YouTube channel. Now, I wrote this book in 2007. It was the second book I've ever published, and I like this book very much. Now, 2007, I don't know where the years went, but it's not a new book. Anyway, over the years, I haven't done a lot of surface stuff. For some reason, I just kind of veered off into another direction. But I decided that maybe I should revisit some of the things I had done. And also because video is different than pictures and the printed word. And people had expressed interest in seeing how some of these things were done, even though they might have the book. So what I'm going to do in this tutorial is I'm actually going to do the encased toner transfers. And let me show you basically what they look like. Okay. Ta-da! I know, I have all these shiny pod things. Which is precisely what they are. They're just pod things. They're not beads. They're not anything but these various little shapes. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. So let's get started. So what you need is actually a laser transfer. Now, this is actually the same one I used in the book. So it's a very, very old transfer, but it's fine. It'll work. Laser transfer, not inkjet, laser. You're going to need a tile. And you're going to need translucent clay. Now, I would advise that you take a fresh piece off of a block, that you don't grab that pile of translucent scrap you have and try to work that up, because we're going to be taking this clay and rolling it so thin that it's going to be very helpful not to have a lot of air pockets. And that's what would happen if I had taken up all these little bits of translucent and then mushed them together and rolled and rolled and rolled. And even though I may roll 1,000,000 times, okay, 100 times, okay, 20 times, it's probably still going to be a little air in there. And that could be problematic later. So start with a fresh piece. Now, I'm going to be conditioning this, of course. So let me take the boss and just start by flattening, like so. Okay, this clay feels really good. It does, it feels really good. Not too sticky, not too dry. It has a good feeling. Now I will roll it through the thickest setting of my pasta machine. First, I'm going to clean under the rollers. I just take something like this and I just run it back and forth. And this is, I must tell you, primarily the way I clean my machine. One of these days, I may get a fancy machine. Right now, I'm just using an Atlas 150. Okay. I'm a little bit of a slob. You guys, if you've been watching me, you guys know this. All right, so let's roll it through. Thickest setting. Ta-ta. Reset the machine, setting number 2. My Atlas starts at 0. Now I will fold and roll. Okay, from the folding and rolling. And the clay isn't going to crumble. It's kind of soft enough. But what I will not do is if it shreds and there are a bunch of little pieces lying around, I'm not going to try to use those. Not for this. It's the same thing I talked about before. Cut it off the block. We don't want any crumbles. Okay, so I'll be back. All right, so I would say I rolled this through about 20 times. And I'm going to bring this up because right there, can you see that little light spot? Well, I would like not to have those at all because I think those are very minute air bubbles. And what will happen is when you start to pull and stretch, they will probably at some point break. So I'm going to roll this through another 10 times or so, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back, and I can still see like one little white dot there. But another thing you can do, and this was taught to me by Lisa Pavelka, actually, when you have like minute air bubbles, if you pull and then fold, and then put it through the pasta machine, of course, the fold on the rollers, then what happens is the stretching starts to help you break up any air bubbles in the clay. So roll, stretch, fold, roll. Okay, yeah, it's very smart. And it will help. So let me roll this through a few more times. It may seem fussy, but if I do a good job at this point, then I will have fewer problems later on. All right, so I rolled through and I stretched, and you know what? It's looking really good and it feels good. Now, if you reach this point and you feel that your clay is a little brittle, then add some conditioning bar or some softener because you want this clay to stretch, all right? You don't want to pull on it and have it break. You want it to slowly stretch out. So that means the clay should have a certain amount of flex to it. Should not be brittle and cold. All right, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to thin it out as thin as I can. All right, so I am on setting number 2. I'm going to go through like 5, then 7, then I'll work my way up to 9, which is the thinnest. I will be back. Okay, I'm back. I just rolled this through setting number 4. I thought, you know, I should probably show you. Now, this is clearly going to be more than I need because I'm going to put it on the tile, right? So I'm just going to cut some of it off because it gets a little difficult to handle. And if I'm careful with that, then I will do the same thing with that piece. All right, so now, oops. Oopsie. Okay. Now, let's go to setting number 5. 5. Okay, so one thing, when you are rolling very thin clay through your pasta machine, if you start having problems with shearing, like the rollers of your machine are starting to grab it and it's starting to tear and you can't roll it through, my suggestion to you is as you are rolling it through the machine, let the rollers grab the edge, but do not let this just drop. Maintain some tension. Maintain some pull above the rollers, and I think that you'll have a much better experience. So let me do that. Now I'm setting number 6. Okay, and I actually do kind of pull the clay as it's going through. Once again, this is more clay than I need. Let me set it to number 8. There's number 8, quite thin, nice and thin. And then finally, I will go through setting number 9, wish me luck. The hard part is not getting it through the machine. The hard part is that, you know, you have to be able to hold on to it. And then as it's going through, then you have to grab it from underneath the rollers. Okay. All right, so not perfect because I kind of lost control over one corner and it kind of flopped back on itself. But at this point, now I will take and just gently stretch it out. So I'm going to make it quite a bit thinner. Even than setting 9. Okay. But the clay has a really nice feel at this point. I'm able to pull and stretch it out, and it is actually stretching with me. Okay. All right. So I think that's about as much as I can do at this point. So next comes, this is the next challenge, okay? And that next challenge is getting it down onto the tile. So you should have a clean tile. Not so easy in my studio. My tiles tend to be pretty beat up. And now you're just going to slowly work across so that you don't capture any air between this very, very thin translucent clay. And you can see I'm holding it up with my right hand and then securing with my left. See a little, I think, air bubbles right there. So I'll have to pierce those, I think, because this clay is so thin, I can't just lift it off and try to expel the air. I'm feeling some kind of little gritty piece of something. I can't see it, but I can feel it. Okay. Just take your time. As you work from one side to the other. Okay, I can see the air bubble there. I'm not too concerned about the perimeter. I will be using mostly the clay in the center. So let me just get rid of some of this along the perimeter. Like so. There's a bad spot, there's a hole, so I'm just going to cut it right there. All right, now I'm going to take this little needle, and wherever I see an air bubble, I'm just piercing it and pushing the air out. Okay. And if you look at it from an angle, you can better see the little air pockets. Okay. And you can see I'm sort of just brushing my fingertips against the clay. And because the clay is so thin, that seems to be enough to move the air out. Now, it probably isn't going to be perfect, but it will be as perfect as I can make it. All right, so I will continue. I have a bunch of them here. I'm not going to make you watch me. I will be back. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Maybe it's not perfect. I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to take this guy, face down on the translucent clay. Let's burnish a bit. Just a little burnishing. Let me cut the excess away because there's like more than I need. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it with water. Okay, so I have a spray bottle. Now, one of the things that happens to me sometimes is if there's too much water on the paper, the water kind of gets underneath the paper itself, and then it just pulls the whole thing off. So I use a spray bottle and just lightly to get most of the paper off initially. And then as I get closer to the ink, I rub lighter. Okay, initially I can rub pretty firmly against the paper. Now, if you don't have a spray bottle, no problem. Just put water in a little dish and you can just dip your finger in like so. I mean, not a big deal, right? And just keep pushing down so that that water doesn't get underneath the paper and the ink. I mean, that's what happens to me. So now I'm ready to tint the piece. And I'm going to be using Pan Pastels. But you know, you can use Perfect Pearls. You can use, there are so many things you could tint this with. Okay, I just happen to have these handy, and so I'm going to use them. Let's take a brush. I'm going to make the base of the feathers dark and then shade out to the tips. Okay. Okay, so I applied the powder on. You know, that powder is like a resist, so I'm just going to dust the excess off. So now I'm going to take my gold leaf. Oops. Stuff is falling. Okay, and I bought this, I don't remember where, but this is 24 karat or 23 karat gold. It's not regular leaf. It's actually pounded metal. So I bought it a long time ago. I don't think it was all that expensive. I suspect now it would be. So what I'm going to do is take this, and you can see it's got the little gold flecks. It's because, well, I took like this, scraps of this, and I threw it in black, and that's what I have. Not a big deal. So I'm going to roll this through 3. That's pretty good. It's not terribly thick. It's not terribly thin. And I'm going to take one piece. Thing is, you want to make sure when you're, see, ooh, look at that. Okay. Don't curl on me, as it will curl back on itself. So let me just do this. That corner folded up just a little bit, but it's not bad. Now, where did that come from? Little bits of paper. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to thin this out, so I've rolled it through setting 3. I'm going to reset and roll it through 4. Okay, and I'm going to reset it and roll it through 5, only this time I will put this edge on the rollers and roll this way. The one thing about 23, 24 karat gold as opposed to leaf, like metal leaf, it seems to me that it crackles a little finer. The crackle pattern is very fine. Okay, so now I'm just going to take the gold side and put it down. Onto the transfer. And those little cracks, even though they're tiny, those tiny cracks will help the black and gold sheet stick to the powder. Now, it may want to come off. It could. Come on, you. Just gonna cut some of this off. All right, so let's cut this off. Okay, now I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I found this. This is just, you know, the stuff you put on your shelves, shelf liner. And I like it because it will help me a bit and keep this tile from slipping around. Because this is one of those situations where I wish I had like 4 hands. Okay? Because I've got to take this blade and hold it against that tile and cut underneath that translucent clay. Right? So I do not want this tile to be slipping all over when I'm trying to cut. And this shelf stuff is just great. It is great. Okay, come on. You can do it. Maybe you can do it. Maybe this is going to be a great big old failure. Okay, let's see what we've got. Okay, so some of it didn't turn out so well. Some of it is okay. But for instance, so I'm finding that I may have to do a little healing. Just a little healing. Just a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and just try. And you know what? I think it will help if I have this. Actually, better. And I must admit, this wasn't my best one. I've done some that were much better than this. I think it's going to be okay, though. Because as I said, I'm not really looking for a specific pattern. I don't want this whole thing to be just absolutely perfect. That's not bad. Not bad. I do want it to be smooth, though. Now, when you do this, if you have to do this, as I have had to, when you peel up the paper, make sure that you peel it like this, slowly. And see how I'm holding this edge very low? Because if I pull straight up, I might make it a lot worse. Okay. Well, that is actually not bad at all, I don't think. So I am going to take some scrap clay and make a base bead, and then I will be back. Okay, let's make our base bead. Scrap clay, rolled through setting number 2, medium setting. And I'm just gonna roll it up really tight. Like that. da, da. Okay. I'm cutting the ends off like so. And I am going to push it down a bit, close the ends. Da, 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 da. Clay feels really good. All right, come on, you. Boink, boink. I don't know what I'm going to do with all of these. Ay, 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 ay. What am I going to do? I just made all these pods. I like them. I like touching them. They feel really good because I sanded and polished. But what am I going to do with them? I'm not exactly sure. I make so many things that end up without a purpose. They just kind of sit around. Okay, so here is, and yet another pod shape. That will be covered with this. But I'm going to roll this through the pasta machine. I'm going to thin it out a little bit. And it's pretty darn thin, isn't it? Oh, it's so thin. It's so thin. But I want to roll it through. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to roll this through like setting number 5. And then back this and roll it through again. I just need a little more clay. I need a little more thickness. Not that much, but I would like more because, well, honestly, I would really like this surface to be smoother, and I think rolling it through the pasta machine will help me in that regard. So I'm going to roll this back down to about 2. I don't know how thick this is, so I'm going to roll it through. And it appears to be about, well, this was a bit thicker than 2. Okay, so I'm going to roll it through again. I'm going to roll it through 3. Why? Because I'm living dangerously. That's why. Okay, let's do it. Actually, I'm going to take this little piece on the end, and I'm going to roll it through 3 and see what happens. No, that's not too bad. Well, it's quite a bit thinner. Quite a bit. So I think I'm going to leave it like this. I think this is just too thin, and the pattern got, see how big the pattern got? The pattern got pretty big. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here. So let's cover this. Now, if I go like this, go around, maybe I'll just do it kind of diagonally like this. Well, there's another solution, and that is simply to make this smaller, like shorter. Okay, that's what I'll do. You're going to see how this goes. All right, so I'm going to start here and just wrap it around the middle, like so. cut. You know what? You're seeing the pattern. Now, after I went through that whole thing about how you don't see the pattern, look, I'm seeing the pattern. Oh dear. I thought I wasn't going to see the pattern, but... And you know what? If I had rolled this through a thinner setting, it wouldn't, you wouldn't see the pattern as much. Definitely. So, I don't know. Around here, it's like every day's a new day. Which is okay. Makes life interesting, right? Okay, so let me just take this. See how I'm pulling it back? Just pulling it back a little bit there. Now, I'm just gonna cut some off like that. Let me see. Okay. Okay, can you do it? Can you do it? Let's see. A bit too much. Just a bit too much. Too much clay in there. How about that? Not good, not good. Okay, so in a situation like this, I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna push it down in there and then bring the sides together. Okay, just like that. Now, same thing here. I'm just going to try to push some of it down in and then take the clay from around and try to close it up over. Okay. Looks like I'm making a fish. And here I have sprung a little hole. Now, I suppose I could try to patch it with just a tiny little piece. See that black right there, or that gray? I'm going to push that in and see if I can encourage the clay from the surface up around, like so. So you can do a lot of that, like pushing push the clay in and then gently coax the clay around it. All right. Okay. Now, some of you may wonder why I didn't roll a cylinder and then close the ends and draw the clay up around to cover. You know, we do that with stripes and things. And I'll show you why we don't do that. See what happened here? Well, that's the way this was formed. It was a cylinder like this, and I took this and wrapped it around, and then pushed it in, and then drew the pattern up around the ends. What happens is everything gets so stretched out at the ends. And that's why I'm fitting it exactly. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to do this end exactly as I did the other, and then I'll be back. Okay, so here is our pod. And yet another pod. Okay, so you know what? I think I'm going to make a cabochon instead of a pod, because look how many I have. If I make this a cabochon, I can make a nice little hanging pendant. I think I could do something nice with it. So I'm going to do that. The way I'm going to do that is find that seam, you know, that seam that is not so great. See the seam? Now I'm going to try to straighten it out. Like so. Just try to straighten it. Like that. And now I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to cut right along that seam and divide this piece in two. All right. Wish me luck. Good luck. I find it a little easier to guide the blade. You see the right side of the blade? I'm just guiding it down. I guided it right down that seam. Oh, I lost a little piece of this. It just came off. So let me see if I can put it back on. Okay, that's not too bad. The leaf just doesn't want to stick as well. The clay really wanted to stick to my marble work surface. That's what happened. But it's not a tragedy. And as a matter of fact, let me see, because I believe one of these had a little spot where there was no translucent cover. I can't find it. I can't find it. I think it's going to be okay. Okay, so now these will be cured flat, just like this. From a cold oven, I will cure them for 40 minutes. I'm sorry, yes, 40 minutes at 300 degrees. So let me pop these in the oven, and when they're done, I'll be back. Okay, I forgot something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, see this? Really fine acupuncture. I mean, it is really fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and I'm going to poke a few little holes here and there. Kind of in places where I think it won't be seen as much. Create these little air vents. So I'm going into kind of the dark areas. Yeah, this is a really fine needle. I like it. Okay, and now I will cure them. Okay, so I am back. Now, I thought, okay, my original plan was just to take this and make it a very simple pendant. You know, just a single element pendant. And that's fine. That's fine. But maybe I should make it more interesting. So I took this, and I have a bag of just discs and things, you know. I just have this big bag of different things. So I started playing with them, and the arrangement I like the best, I think, is this guy. This lower disc is textured. You know, I just take a ball stylus and I make rings. And then this is just a Skinner blend, tiny Skinner blend disc. And then I stick a little tiny gold spot in the middle. Now, I think this is a little large, so I would reduce the size. But this is the way it will hang, and I like it because the greens pick up the green here. This red picks up those red spots in the primary part of the pendant. So I think that's what we're going to do. And I've got to figure out exactly how to connect the pieces. What kind of connecting mechanism. Could be as simple as 2 jump rings and then a jump ring connecting the 2, and that's probably what I'll do. Because you get a lot of movement, but this piece will not be able to turn around. Okay, so let's get started. The next thing we're going to do is make this piece. I will be back. So you can see this is a Skinner blend from this very dark green into a very yellow green. I do this a lot. It's like one of my favorite things. There it is again in a leaf. Okay, so how do we mix the colors? Essentially, it's 1/16 part of red. Or no, excuse me, 1 part of red, 16 parts of green. When you mix this together, you will get this darker green. I really like this green a lot. Now, after you mix that, then you mix a bit of whatever you've mixed here into a block of yellow, and that's what gives you that second color. Okay, so let me just do that, and I will be back. Okay, here's the green, and here is the yellow. So what I'm going to do, and I softened the green just a little bit by adding some conditioning bar because it was a little bit stiffer. Now I could probably add just a little bit of this to make it more like this. And what we're going to do with the clay will benefit from being just a bit softer anyway. Okay, so let me soften that. And I am going to take some of this and toss it into here. That might be a little too much. You know, yellow is a very weak color, so it's not going to take all that much to make that color right there. So let me mix this up, roll it through the pasta machine, and I'll be back. Okay, here are the two colors, and you see, it didn't really take much to change this, did it? Now, if you wanted it to be a little bit darker, you would add more. And that's how you would adjust the color. So let's make a Skinner blend. You should know this. Well, okay, I won't say you should, but it is a very common technique. Okay, so I'm going to fold over and make more or less a right angle triangle here. Boom, boom, boom. And because I like doing things quickly, I'm going to put one on top of the other. And then with my blade, I'm going to make two cuts that make that 90-degree angle. Okay, I do it this way because I like using as much of the clay as possible, and this is to me the simplest way. Ta-da! So I've used all but these two bits of clay. Now let's put them back together, and I'm going to offset the corners. And if you know this, and you can just skip right ahead. Okay. So there is the basic setup. Now what happens next is that I will place this edge on the roller. This edge or this edge. Not the solid color edges, but the two color edges. Green, lime green, lime green, green. This is on the edge. Now, every time after, I'm going to fold this sheet, and I fold it in a very particular way. Same color edge, on the same color edge. Place the fold on the rollers and roll through. All right. Same color edge, same color edge. Now, I'm going to show you what it looks like if it's wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. If you fold it wrong, it's going to look like this. That is not one color, is it? This is sort of one color, but only because it's like at the end. But you see that little bit there. But definitely, this is wrong. This is right. Fold on the rollers, roll through. So I'm going to continue to do this until it's completely blended, and then I'll be back. All right, here is the blend, and I'm going to turn this into a plug. You know, Skinner Blend and the plug, they're both separate basic tutorials on my channel. So if you need further clarification, you can go there and watch. Now, I'm going to roll this with the Skinner Blend edge through the rollers, but I'm going to make it thinner. Why? Because it's a little easier to roll if it's slightly thinner. So I'm going to roll it through medium setting, setting 2, like so. And as I said, the only reason is because it's slightly easier to roll. Now, I don't even trim this edge at all. I'm just going to start by very slowly pushing this edge back into itself. It's not a fold. It's more like, I describe it as like a handkerchief edge. If you sew at all, you know what the difference is between making an actual hem, like on a pair of jeans, and then making a handkerchief edge, which is almost like pushing the fabric just gently back into itself. Okay, so you can also see I am not rolling from here to here. I am rolling the blend back on itself. Okay. Now this becomes a plug. I'm going to take this and I'm going to compress it and make it shorter. And I want it to be quite short. Because remember, the piece that I'm going to cut is probably going to be no larger than this. It'll be smaller than this. So let's set a goal to reduce or push this in and compress it until The whole blend is contained in this distance. Okay. So that's what we have. Now, if you look at the color, this is a little bit darker green. I think there might have been a little more red in there than there was in here. Okay, so next we have to make this. Woohoo! So let me prepare and I'll be back. Okay, here we are. I have a tile. I have my plug. I have this nice ball stylus. It's not really, really small. It's not huge, but it's not tiny. And then I have a cutter, and I think I'm going to use this size. This is the original size. Here we go. See, it's smaller. This, I feel, is a little too small. So I think I'm going to go with this one right here. Okay. Put that one away because I get mixed up. All right, so let's start. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a piece off of the plug. Like so. Now I will take this and just kind of lightly flatten it in my fingers. I have like so many acrylic rods and I don't see a single one right now. Isn't that funny? I think they're all together somewhere. When I used to wear sunglasses, I loved sunglasses and I had so many of them, but every now and then I wouldn't be able to find a single pair. And then, mysteriously, I would find all of them together in the same place. What's that about? Kind of scary. All right, so here you see how thick it is. So I'm going to set my pasta machine to the thickest setting, and I'm going to place a blended edge on the rollers and roll through. Ta-ta! All right, so this doesn't have to be probably this thick, so I'm going to reset my machine to 1, and I'm going to roll through. That's fine, not very different. Now, let me tell you, the reason why we can't make it thin, 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 thin is because it has to be thick enough for me to do this. To really dig a channel in there. So there are limitations as to how thin this can be, but I have not hit that yet. So I am going to roll through setting number 2. Now it feels like we're getting a little close. Let me try again. But I think I still have plenty of room underneath the channel. But I may be pushing it, so I'm going to stop. I'm just going to stop. But when you roll out your clay, just bear that in mind. It has to be a certain thickness so that you can actually get down in there and dig out channels without like going all the way through to the tile. Okay. So I'm going to take my round cutter and select an area I like. Maybe like that. Maybe that's a good area. This is too dark. This is, maybe I want a little more dark, like so. Now, if I wanted to get more of the complete blend, I could roll this up and plug it and make it even shorter. Okay, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to cut. I think that's fine. Now what happens to this? Well, I can make another one, of course, but let's say I'm not making another one. I'm going to cut an extra just in case I mess it up, though. It's not a bad idea to have a backup. But let's say I'm through with this. What am I going to do? You know, if I leave this around like this, it's just going to get messed up. So what I tend to do is fold it back on itself like this. Just like so. Yes, these areas are missing, but still it will make a nice Skinner blend. I can blend it and I will have a nice blend. It'll be slightly different. As I said, that central area is missing, so that those colors are missing, but it'll be a nice little blend. So that's what I do. Okay, now let's get started here. What I do is I take my ball stylus and I dig out the channel starting from the perimeter. You see? And this is also why you can see you wouldn't want the clay to be extremely dry and hard. You want this tool to sort of glide through. And yes, it's going to push up little bits of clay like that. But you know, if the clay is extremely dry, it pulls up cracks. You'll have a lot of cracking. You don't have to hit it the first time either. You can just keep going over the same area. And I think that will also minimize the bits of clay that you might be pulling up from the channel like that. Another thing that's probably going to be very helpful for you is to keep like a dry brush like this around. Just get rid of it. Okay, so that is the first row. The second row is just made by repeating inside the first, like so. And you will go until you get to the middle. If you start in the middle and try to make rings from the very center, I can guarantee you one thing: your finished piece will not be round. It'll be sort of round, but it won't be round. Now, there will be flaws in the way, see, there's like a little greater distance here than there is here. That's going to happen. But the overall shape is going to be a nice round disc. We're going to be covering up the center. Remember, we're going to cover up the center with this. And so it's a lot less critical knowing what we're going to do ultimately. Okay, so there's the second ring. So let me continue working to the middle and then I'll be back. Okay, so here we are. So first you're going to start just by lightly rubbing the surface and bringing these off. Then take a brush, and this could be cleaner, and brush any little bits that you didn't get away. like so. Okay. If you feel you have to make any corrections or whatever, just go over the channels and then repeat that cleanup process. Okay. Okay, now what's that? I'm supposed to clean up. I'm not supposed to make it worse. Okay, so there we go. Now you're going to take your blade and you're just going to push across like that to lift the piece up. Then the piece, oh my goodness, is pressed to the inside of a metal bowl. Now, the smaller the bowl, the more extreme the curve, right? So if you want it to be more dished, then you would select a smaller bowl, but I think a gentle curve is just fine. Just like that. So now I'm going to cure this. Actually, I'm not going to cure it yet. We're going to move on to this little guy. All right, so I have red and I have orange. I'm going to skin or blend them. I'm going to turn them into a plug, just like I did before. Not much clay there, but we don't need much. Okay, so here is what we're going for. Here is the plug. Here are a couple of round cutters. I know I made this, but what cutter did I? Too small, too big, too small. It's just like the three little bears. Somewhere in this studio there is a cutter that is just right. But I may have to go with what I've got, kids. Lordy. Okay, I'm going to do this one and I'm going to do this one. And then we'll see what works out best. Okay, start the same way. Cut a piece off of the plug. Flatten it a bit. Doink, doink, doink. Doink, a doink. A doink, a doink. Just flatten that baby. Like so. Now I'm going to roll it through the thickest setting on the pasta machine. First, I will clean under the roller. Look. Ay, ay, ay. That's what I clean mostly underneath the rollers. Okay, this edge goes on the rollers. I'm going to roll through the thickest setting. Ta-ta! Okay, now this does not have to be thick at all, so I'm going to thin it out, rolling it through 3. Okay, 2. Let's roll it through 3. I think that's fine. Now I'm going to cut these 2 shapes. I look at both sides. I think I'm going to roll this through the machine again. Just like that. Is it getting better? Okay, this side is better. Okay, so first I will cut. This is a Kemper cutter. Bad, bad, bad. The plunger. I pushed on the plunger. let's try again. I'm going to try holding the plunger up. I haven't used these in a long time. This is out of, was it the Rose Cutter set? Could be. Could be. Got so many cutters. All right. Okay, that looks fine. Like so. Now I will take my sponge and just texture it. I am so sorry. I don't know where to get this sponge. Because I got it overseas. Well, I know that this is Spanish filter material of some sort, but between you and me, I don't know what sort. I don't know. And I've been ordering things from Amazon, trying to find this. And everything I order is like thick like that. So I don't know. I need someone who knows filter material to please explain what this is and what it's used for and where we can get it. Okay, so I will be right back. I have to get a smaller bowl. So we need a tiny little gold square. Now, I have options. I could use foil, could use leaf, could use, you know, powders. Maybe powder might be the best. Could also use acrylic paint. Now, I think I'm going to use powder. I'll be back. Okay, so somewhere in my studio, you hear me say that a lot, somewhere in my studio, you know, I have perfect pearls. They would work. This is from Christy Freeze and Surface Effects Metallicious. So I've not used this before. I'm going to use it now. I have to open it. I'll be back. I did it. I opened it. Very pretty. Okay. So, don't sneeze. Let me just rub it on with my fingers, because I do a lot of work with my fingers. And it seems to be just a bit, the particles seem to be just a tiny bit larger than perfect pearls, but hey, I could be wrong about that too. Okay, I'm closing this up, setting it aside, trying to contain the mess that I will make. Okay. Now the challenge for me is going to be to keep my hands clean so that I don't get this powdery stuff all over the red and the orange. It's a challenge. It's not impossible, it's just a challenge. Okay, so let's cut. And I just did this on black clay. Okay. I got a bowl. It is perfectly smooth inside. It just has this ridge, these ridges on the outside. So I'm going to press that to the inside of the bowl because I want a tighter curve like so. So let me just doink right in the middle first. And let's do the second one. Now, I think I'm going to put just a dab of liquid clay on this, the little gold squares in the middle. Just a bit, not much. My liquid is kind of messed up. And I even cover it up, but all right, so just a little dab of liquid. And this is how I cover up my liquid, like so. All right, now these pieces will be cured. I'm going to put them in a cold oven at 300 degrees, and I'm going to cure them for 40 minutes. I'll be back. All right, now we're at the point where we have to make some decisions. How is this going to hang? Am I going to put a bail on the back and have it sit like this? Because that's what it would look like. The wire would look like it's going into the piece and in the back. There's another way, which is to create a bail that will go around the wire. And I think that that's probably a better look in this case. Now it's going to be a clay bail. It will be a small clay bail, not some big, humongous piece of clay, okay? But I also want to create a bezel around this piece. So first, we'll make the bezel. Then I think I'm going to cure it. And then after that's cured, then we'll make the bail and back the piece. Okay, let me prepare. So before doing the bezel, we have to prepare the edge of the piece for the bezel, the clay bezel. And that's simple. All I'm going to do is I'm taking this micro mesh. I start with 1500, and the reason why the water looks soapy is because I put soap in it, okay? So it's water with a bit of soap in it. And now I'm just going to do the edge. Maybe up a bit on the sides. But if I sand the entire piece and make it nice and shiny, you know what happens? When you bake it again, it gets dull. So I'm just sanding this edge so that when I put the bezel on, it's nice and straight and flat. So it won't look lumpy. So I'll just do 1500. In micro mesh, 1500 is the coarsest. And this is not a situation where I would use the Abra net. You know, mostly, you guys have seen me use Abra net, and it's really a great product, but it's very coarse. And if I were to use it, I would sand away all of this, like immediately. And you don't want to do that. So just keep sanding and feeling the surface. like so. Very easy. Now you also want to examine the back of the piece. And you want to make sure that it's completely flat. And by flat, I mean that this is flat, you see. I can do a bit of this. And this isn't bad at all, so it's just not going to take much to sand to this. If this were really bad, let's say it was very, very irregular, then I would use the Abra net instead of the micro mesh. I wish you could feel this. I mean, the difference between the way this feels and the way this feels is pretty remarkable. Okay, I'm going to set that aside because we will be sanding later. Okay, dry this off. Okay, next we're going to make the bezel. So what I have here is just black clay that I've rolled through setting number 5 on my pasta machine. So it's quite thin because I need to get a piece of paper. Because I really don't want a very thick, heavy bezel. So I don't need much of this. Okay, now I'm going to take my mark set tool. We used to make this, but then we got ripped off from China, so we don't make it anymore. And I'm going to take the 5mm side and just lightly impress into the clay. Like that. Yeah, you know, I was really kind of surprised at that because the market for mark set tools is really small, but I guess there's no market that's too small. So it's unfortunate. It's kind of sad for us. And somewhere somebody is selling the Chinese knockoff, but I can't tell you where that is. I really don't know. Okay, so I've got my 2 strips. Now I'm going to take I was going to use liquid clay, but I think this is a good situation. This is really a better situation for PolyPaste. Okay, so I'm just going to take my PolyPaste, kind of clean off the top, and just take a brush. And let's just apply some along the perimeter. PolyPaste is a very nice product. It holds in a way that liquid clay does not. It's thicker and stickier, so I think situation like this, I think it's kind of better. I'm sorry, was I like way off? See where I'm putting it? I'm just taking it and putting it along the edge right there at the base. Okay, am I under my camera? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. It holds better, but it's still movable. Okay. There we go. And run your fingers along the base to make sure that the strip hasn't like fallen below. Okie dokie. That looks to be about the center. I will roll that to the edge. Let me try on this side just to trim any excess away. Like so. Okay. All right, so let's apply more PolyPaste to the other side. I would say most of the time PolyPaste and liquid clay in terms of adhering clay pieces together, raw to cured. I would say they behave in very much the same way, but there are situations where the PolyPaste is actually more effective and will make your life a bit easier. This is one of them. Okay, so let me just position this. Take my blade, try to cut the excess away like so, and then bring the two pieces together. It's not perfect, but I will end up sanding, I'm sure. And even though I rolled through setting 5, there's enough clay to sand and refine after it's cured. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Let me see something here. Maybe I can take the tip of my needle. And flatten it a bit. It's not absolutely centered, but I don't think it looks terrible. All right, so this piece will now be cured. And I'll probably cure it for just 20 minutes this time. Maybe even less. I just want it cured enough so that I can touch it. So I think 10 minutes, because it's going to be cured again, right? So in a situation like that, I don't think it's necessary to cure for 40 minutes. So this will go in for, let's say, 10 minutes, just so that it's hard enough for me to work with. Okay, I'll be back. All right, so this piece is cured. Well, partially cured, it's not totally. So what I've got to do is I've got to find the exact center. So I'm going to use this ruler. This center line, this 6 is actually 0. And then if you follow the middle line, the numbers, the inches go out from there. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So it makes it easy to find the exact center. So here it is there, and it's right there. So you can see the pen marks like that on both sides. So I will kind of drop that here. Then on the other side, do the same thing. So then I know where the center is. Because I certainly don't want to hang this thing crooked. Okay. It wouldn't work out as well, I think. All right, so there is the exact center. Okay, now I think that this will be the up, the flatter side will be up, and the curvier side will be down. So what I'm going to do is I am going to glue an O-ring to the back like this. And then the disc will have an O-ring attached to the back, and then the 2 O-rings will be connected by another O-ring. Now, not going to see it. I don't anticipate seeing the rings at all. So I don't think it matters whether I choose the silver or the gold. I just don't think it matters. And the truth is, the finding itself on the wire is silver. And actually, it probably doesn't make any difference because you could mix metals all to your heart's desire. But that's what I'm going to do. So let us glue that to the back first. Where's my glue? Oh, here it is. It's like buried in all the other stuff. La la la, la la la. And I'm using one of the larger O-rings, not the not the tinier ones. This size I find is perfect for earrings. I think this size is, well, it is stronger because you can see the difference in the gauge of the wire. All right. I like these. I use these tiny ones a lot. And as a matter of fact, I used the tiny ones when I did the mid-century modern necklaces, and I think that they're fine for that. Okay, so I think that's good. Now I'm going to take my clay, my backing clay, and it has been rolled through, I think it was setting number 3. Now let me roll this through setting 2. I want it to be a little bit thicker. Just a tad thicker in the back. Okay, we're going to work on paper again. I work on a lot of this paper. This particular piece of paper has a lot of clay on it. Let me get a new one. A semi-fresh piece. Okay. Now, the actual bail, I think it should be maybe 3/8 of an inch wide. I don't want it to be too wide, but I also don't want it to be too narrow and too weak. So I think 3/8 of an inch. This width will be a good bail. I could do it maybe 1/4 of an inch. That would be a bigger bail. Huh. Yeah, I think I'll do 1/4 of an inch because this is so very wide. So first, I'm just going to make the bail. Just going to cut 1/4 of an inch. And I think I'll start right there. Okay. Quarter of an inch. About there. Okay. Now, is this wide enough? It's another thing you have to consider, because this has to fit on top, and it is just barely. Let me just get rid of the excess like this. Like so. Now the bail itself, what will happen here is that this little arm will be trimmed, and then I will wrap it and roll it toward the piece. Okay? The one thing I don't know is exactly how much I need. So how big is this hole going to be? The hole should be big enough, of course, for the clasp to go through. And I wish I had more of these magnetic ones. I can't seem to get them. So this is what will be threaded through the little clay bail. So that's quite small. This is plenty big. I have so many things. This is fine. This is a bamboo skewer. You can see it is actually larger, so this would be fine too. And I think I'll use the knitting needle. Okay, so let's see how much it takes to get around once. Just gonna take this. Let's see. Takes about that much, and this is what it will look like above, just like so. Okay, and I think that that's fine. I think it's fine. So let's unroll it. And just take a look and see how much I need. How about right there? Okay. Okay. I don't make bails like this often. They work. They definitely work, but I just don't make them all that often. Now, I'm going to take that line, remember that line, and try to center it on the bail itself, like that looks good. That looks good. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? because this isn't going to hurt at all. So I'm just going to draw a line straight down the middle, because I really think this is going to help me. Just a faint line down the middle, and it looks and it looks a little crooked. It is a little crooked. I managed to make a crooked little line down the middle. There, that's better. Okay, so that shiny mark will be centered on the line like so. Gonna make my life a little bit easier here. And I am going to just cut straight across there. Okay. Just a little easier. All right, let's put some liquid clay on the back of this guy. I'm going to put some liquid clay right there in the eye of the ring. Oops. Oopsie. Okay, dude. Let's do it. Like that. And like that. And push it down. Push it. I'm pushing. Good deal. All right, now I'm going to take and trim around the perimeter. Okay, I don't know if that's my hair or if that's Louie's. I suspect it's Louie's. My hair is very coarse and it's gray. Louie has fluffy, soft fur. He's like a microfiber puppy. He was the softest puppy I'd ever felt. It's like you couldn't feel his fur. You know what? He's still kind of the same way. Very much a microfiber puppy. Okay, just trying to trim that little bit of clay away. And I'm hoping I don't have to do any patching later. See, I would really like to close that up right there. So I'm going to work on that a little harder. As you guys can see that space there? So let me work on that just a bit. And primarily the way I work on it is by pushing like this with my fingers. Yeah, like so. And then maybe taking a tool and just trying to heal everything up. I don't think it's going to be a huge problem here, but it'll look better if I can correct it. It will, it will, it will. And there's plenty of clay on the back to push and try to get to heal, so you can see ultimately this backing might be a little bit thinner because I'm pushing it up just to try to heal that one seam. Okay, so let me work on that, and when I'm done, I'll show you. Okay, so I pushed a lot of this clay up along the edge, you see, and rather than trying to blend it, I think I'm going to cut it away. Let's see if I can make it look nice and tidy that way. And, you know, of course, I'm going to be sanding it later. Mostly I want to fill any spaces, like if there's a space, a gap. Okay, so you can see what I've done. So let me take my blade and just glide it along the edge like so. And I didn't heal it, but it's tidy. It's neat looking. That's kind of what I want. If I can't blend it and make it invisible, which I probably could if I worked hard enough at it here, but I'm not sure it's really absolutely necessary that I do that. I just need it to look very tidy and neat. It's kind of my goal. Most of the time, the goal is very tidy and neat and intentional. A lot of that will be taken care of with sanding at the end. Okay. All right. So, you know, I think I'm going to put this on a tile. And, oops, oopsie. Oopsie. And I will definitely have to sand the back too, because I did not texture. All right, so let's see if we can get this going. Long. Okay, I'm going to unroll it and cut a bit off. Long. That's better. Much better. But what I do want to do is take a little bit, of liquid, put it right down there, right there. And then roll it over. How did I get that green? Urgh. Okay. And of course, well, this is actually a plastic knitting needle, so it's not going in the oven. Just make sure it's really stuck. There. Now this will be cured. I will sand these ends. I'll sand it all. So let me put it in the oven. All right, so this I cured, but you know, I don't like it as much. See the difference? A lot more finer rings. This is like, I don't like it as much. So I've done it again. Now, because we're going to have this, the red piece in the middle, there's really no reason. As a matter of fact, it's better if this area is flat. So I stopped there. Okay. Yeah, don't be afraid to make changes. If you notice something that you don't like, when you notice it before you put a piece together, well, that's the time to change it, isn't it? So I'm much happier with this as opposed to this. These rings are too wide, are too far apart. So I'm going to cure this, set me back a little bit, but I'm going to be much happier in the end. So that's a good thing. Okay. Okay, so I'm back. Now, one of the things I don't like, this is a lot brighter than this, isn't it? So I can't really do anything about it right now. Okay, I could, but let's just use this as an experiment. It's a good time to experiment. I'm going to take some raw umber on a very old paintbrush. It's really old. Oh, I should be wearing gloves. Bad me. Bad, bad, bad me. I just happen to have a box of gloves handy. This is oil paint after all. So, maybe I could invest in a new brush. Okay, I will. Okay, so now let's rub some off and see what happens. Okay. I feel like I rubbed too much off. I'd like to have a very light coat of the paint on the surface, on every surface. I'm trying not to rub it all off. You guys saw I put it on and then I promptly rubbed it all off. I just want to bring the intensity of the green down a little bit. Maybe I could use my glove. Just bring it down a bit. This is some ancient paint I have here. Really old paint. Nah, come on, get on there, you. Get on there. I'll deal with that later. Okay, so let's just take a look. And you know, I like it better. I like it much better. I knocked down the intensity of the green by applying the oil paint to the surface. So I think I'm going to do that with the other one. Okay, I'll be back. So now I've got to sand the perimeter. So I'm using the Abra Net. Let's see, I think this is P180, P120. And really, it's just to knock down the edge like so. I am making a mess. Doesn't take much. And now we're gonna put the oil paint on before we set it in black clay. Okay. Because I want the black clay to stay black, so I don't want to get any paint on it. So here's kind of the difference between the two. I found a fresher, huge tube of oil paint. It is burnt umber. I found a new brush. I only used it on this one. And I have a rubber glove, latex glove. Okay, so let's antique this puppy. Now, Leslie Blackford is the one who told me about using oil paint instead of acrylic paint. And I really like oil paint because it seems to soak into the clay and almost more like a stain than a surface paint. And you know, acrylic paint sits on the surface, does a good job, but I had a heck of a time with acrylic paint. I would put it on, and then I would promptly rub it all off. And then I would put more on, and I would rub it all off. I mean, it was so frustrating. Okay, so what's also frustrating here is that I have to go get a paper towel. One day I'll do a studio tour and you will see why it's really kind of a miracle I get anything done in here. It is. It's a miracle. It's kind of a miracle. Okay, come on. What am I doing here? I need Leslie. Leslie. I took a pottery class in college. You know what I got? Dirty. I was absolutely the worst at pottery, at ceramics. I could never find the center, and I just, honestly, I just got dirty. That's what I accomplished in pottery class, ceramics class. I got dirty. Okay, so that's not too bad. It's not the best, but you know, the whole goal of this was just to knock down the color a bit, and I succeeded in doing that. I would rather have something more muted than something as bright as it was, and it was way bright. Okay, so now all of this goes in the garbage. We're going to let that dry a bit, and then I'll be back. Okay, so this is cured. It has to be sanded, of course. And this is the oil paint treated piece. And I did put it in the oven for maybe 15 minutes just to expedite the drying. And you can see that now it can be handled. So I'm going to back this first. And I'm going to back it with black clay. And I've rolled this sheet through setting 5, which is the same as the bezel. Going to take my liquid clay and just apply it to the back and to the sides, rather the edge, just like that. Like so. And take this guy and put it on the back. You know, I should have cut it out first. Generally, I try to simply take a cutter like that. It's just a little bit easier. You're dealing with a little less clay. Okay, like so. All right. Then I'm gonna take my blade and just run it around the perimeter and trim the excess away. Not bad. Not bad. Come on. Come on, you. It's a little rough. You know, I ran into a rough spot, and it's harder to trim. Okay, so this will be perfect. I will sand that edge after. All right, just like that. Now, I think I'm going to use this piece. Okay, I like it because it's a little bit darker. That orange is a bit darker than the other ones I made. So we'll use that. But first, we have to figure out how these are going to go together. So I'm going to turn this over. You know, I'm going to take my ta-ta, and I'm going to pierce a bunch of holes in the back. Like that. Let's turn this over and see. All right, So I think that this is probably the way it will go. That will slightly overlap this piece. Not by a ton, but it will slightly overlap it. Now I'm going to roll black clay through a thicker setting. Let's say setting 1. See how thick this is. That's pretty good. All right. So let me take Do I want that guy? Might be a little big. This guy's a little small. This guy might be just right. So I'm just going to. Okay. Now, if I center this here, get close to center, and put one guy here, then what will happen is there will be one more ring that connects these two. Does that make sense? I think it does. And that's the way the two pieces will be connected. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this in a bit, like so. And I'm going to take more black clay. I do have more clay than that. I do. Look, I have more. Okay, and I am going to roll it thinner. It doesn't have to be really, really thick. And this guy will go right on top. But you know what? I always put just a drop of liquid clay up. Around the jump ring. I don't want any space there. Okay. Okay, so let me flatten it best I can, like so. And this looks awfully sloppy along here, doesn't it? Sloppy, sloppy, sloppy. I have so many tools. I have so many tools. I'm going to cut because I have to find the tool I want. Found it. Okay. So this is just a little nylon tool. Pretty, huh? It's got little pink crystals in it. But I find that it's really kind of perfect for this kind of application, because it moves the clay nicely and kind of gently. No, what I really don't want, I do not want that to come out. So let's do our smoothing all the way around so that the pad is securely attached. This is the pad, is securely attached to the clay. And then we have to make sure that that ring can't get out. Just cannot. Okay, so there is a line there. You can even take this tool and kind of push the clay down like that. I can't quite get my fingers down in there. What can I say? Just want it to look tidy, neat and tidy. Oops, too much liquid on that brush. I think this will help though. Just brushing. Very good. Okay, that's perfect. Now, da, 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 da. Now I'm just gonna take this little needle, smooth that and push it. As I said, I just do not want this to pull out. And it won't, as long as I have clay up there in the hole. Okay. Very good. So it's going to go like this and like this, and the ring will pull it back like so. And there's plenty of clearance here. Here, let me pick them up, because even if it's like this, you see, there's still room for the top of this over. It's not going to be jammed up against it and push it down like that. It'll be more like that. Oh, here, I show you. Be like that. Be like that. Okay, now let us secure this guy. Actually, let me think for a minute. Okay, this has to cure. I want to cure the entire back. So I'm going to cure this first. And I'm going to put it face down like this, down in a bed of baking soda. And I'm going to bake it for 40 minutes at 300 degrees. I'll be back. Okay, so here's the bottom piece. I put oil paint on this because I thought it was too bright. This was too bright. So I've rolled black clay through setting 2 on the pasta machine. And I'm not going to wrap that tiny piece. I'm just going to mount it on this pad. Okay, so I'm going to take that, push it on, take a little bit of liquid, push it on the back, center that on top, and press it on to secure. Okay, so it's like that, and I think that's good. I like this piece on the bottom. It looks like something very old, very ancient. I like it. Should I dangle a pearl? I mean, I could just go on forever. I don't think I'll dangle a pearl. I am going to cure this though, and then we're going to put it together. All right, so this piece has to be sanded. So, you know, a space like this plane, this little next to the hole, I really want that to be flat. So I'm just going to use this, which is something I got in Germany, but it's just half round with 100 grit, German grit, sandpaper wrapped around it. So I think this is pretty simple to make, and it is a nice little sanding stick for a use like this. Okay. All right, good. Now I am going to use the Aubronette, the 120, and I'm going to use it to sand the back. So I want this to be nice and smooth. I think you should always try to make the back of your jewelry look as good as the front, or maybe not as good, but it should look as good as you can make it. Okay, that looks good. And I gotta get down in here. maybe just get down in there. Good. Okay, now let's sand all the way around like this. And I'm trying to avoid the surface. This I'm going to have to sand with the micro mesh. I really don't want to scratch it up too badly, which is what this would do. So I'm actually avoiding the surface of the cabochon. Let me see. Oh, that's good. Okay, let's attack this side. All right, so I'll continue and I'll work my way all the way around. And then I'll be back. All right, so I sanded with the 120 and now I'm gonna do the 180 because, you know, it's very, very, very scratched up. So let me try to smooth it down a little bit by just sanding it again with 180 and then 360. You know, the coarsest I have is like P80, which is pretty coarse. I mean, really coarse. Okay, so I'm just going to do the whole thing again. With this P180 and then P320, and then I'll be back. All right, so I finished sanding with the Abranet, and now, you know what? I'm going to sand the whole thing with micro mesh, starting with 1500. And when I say the whole thing, I mean I'm going to sand the whole thing. Okay. And I would say concentrating mostly on the focal piece, on the cabochon. But definitely I'm going to sand the whole piece with the micro mesh. Now, so far I've used micro mesh and I've used the Abranet. If you're new and you're just starting and maybe you've never even sanded anything yet, a good all-purpose way to go is the way that we started years and years and years ago, which was to start with 400 grit, 600 grit, 800 grit, wet dry sandpaper, just regular old automotive wet dry sandpaper. And that will probably do 95% of what you want to do can be accomplished with that. Now you may have to work a little harder than if you had Abranet. For instance, you guys have watched me with the Abranet. It takes clay down so fast. But maybe you don't know that you want that yet. So if you're just starting, I would say go and get automotive paper, 400, 600, 800 grit, and that will probably do you just fine until you know you want to invest in more. I don't like telling you you have to get certain things. You might have to put a little more elbow grease in. What, Louie? What, Louie? Louie's talking to me. Okay, so I have to go let Louie out, and then I'm going to continue when I get back sanding with the 1500. Then I will go to 1800, etc. I'll be back. Okay, so I have worked my way down to 6,000. So
I could hear my hair crackle, and I could hear, feel a little stinging here. People are frantic. Some people have taken their gas masks off.
It feels really great. Okay.
So I looked out. There was a window. There was a big hole.
By the time you get to 6,000, it doesn't feel like it's doing anything at all. It's just so fine.
I didn't think anyone was going to make it out after me.
But it is.
They're walking up with their hands up, and I'm walking behind them with my hands up. And I got about halfway up between the building and the Red Cross sign, and I turned around to see the building completely engulfed in flame. And that black chemical smoke coming up off the building. And then an explosion and this fireball.
All right, so there we have it. It's wet, but let me dry it off with towels. Move the water.
They pick us up and they put us in a tank.
Just murder on your hands.
We waited for the wave, bodies coming running out, and they didn't. And there was nothing on the radio that they were coming out the front. I got up out of my sniper position, and I walked out through Sierra 2, and I was standing there.
And that looks really good. And I didn't even really have to buff it with my electric buffer to get a nice sheen on the cabochon. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I'm going to have to do exactly the same thing with the piece that dangles. I'm not going to make you watch me. So this is what I did. Let us start from here. 1,500, 1,800, 2,400, 3,200, 36, 4,000, and finally 6,000. That's what I sanded with, all of these, in soapy water. Okay. So I will be back after I sand the other piece. Then we will put them together. Okay, so I put them together. I didn't think you had to watch me. But you can see here's one jump ring, another jump ring, and they are connected by this one in the middle. And from the front, this is what it looks like. Just like that. Okay. I like it. I like this sort of antique-y looking old, new old piece. and the red. I think the green and the red pick up the green and the red in this piece nicely. I don't know, maybe on a different day I would have gone with, got all these other ones, gold and green and red stuff. But for today, this is what it is. I could always change it though. I can. All right, so that has been this class on the Encased transfer with tinting and coloring. We used pan pastels for that. And then I showed you how to make a simple bezel and how to make a nice little hanging loop. All right, so that is it for today's class. I hope you've enjoyed, and have a great day. Bye. All right, so I know I said goodbye and I'm coming back. This happens with me sometimes. You're probably used to it. I realized I should have maybe shown you the piece in a little more detail, particularly where, remember that seam I was so worried about? Well, it's pretty much gone. By the time I cured it, sanded it, buffed it, it's really gone. So that was good. Now, the second thing I didn't talk about is why the piece is so shiny. I did not use an electric buffer because if you use micro mesh and you run through all those grades that I did, starting with 15, 18, and so forth, what happens is you get a surface that requires just very light buffing. I used a microfiber blanket, and it got this shiny. So I did not need to use my electric buffer on this piece, and you can see how shiny it is. Okay, that is one of the huge advantages of micro mesh, is that you can achieve very high gloss like this just by running through the grits without using an electric buffer. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to tell you. So now that I have a great day. Bye.